6 times now. 6 times Liverpool have hoisted that European Cup, putting them at 3rd for most European titles. Hey, I'm Adrian from 1-800-I-need-a-haircut.com, and today we'll go through my snap reaction to Liverpool's Champions League victory. If you want more football content all summer, before the Premier League kicks off, or just football in general, 69 days. Seriously, I'm not just memeing. But if you want content all summer, then just be sure to hit that subscribe button. That was clumsy, but hey. We just go with it here. All right, now let's see if I got my prediction correct or not, and we'll see what my final percentage was for the entirety of my Champions League predictions. Group stage, everything. All right, let's do it. Klopp seems to have Pochettino's number. It's going to be a very closely contested final and be true to form as far as the last few times that these two teams have met. So I'll say 3-2 Liverpool, sure. Let's go for that. There you go, guys. Enjoy that. Have fun with that prediction in the comments. Okay, got the result right. So let's go through the entirety of it. So in the group stage, I got 12 out of 16. Round of 16, I got 5 out of 8. Quarters, I got 3 out of 4, 1 for 2 in the semis and 1 for 1 in the final. So that all adds up to 22 out of 31. So not really the less than 50% that some people think that I get. Overall, 71% accuracy. Not bad. I mean, were there any YouTubers out there that had godly prediction runs this Champions League season? I'd be interested to know where I stand after seeing how well my Premier League predictions did in comparison to how my Champions League predictions did against other people's. Champions Liverpool didn't have the flashiest display, but they had an extremely mature display, especially when you compare it to the team even from last season. Last season, they would just look to outscore their opponents, and the defending was an afterthought at times, whereas this season, their game management is way better. Tottenham, they looked more like a team that hadn't played in a few weeks, at least more than Liverpool did. Neither of the teams looked at their best, which the break can be blamed for that to some degree, but speaking of which, no players had longer breaks between matches than those of Harry Winks and Harry Kane, who both hadn't played for 7.5 weeks, and neither of them looked particularly sharp. I mean, you have Lucas Moura sitting on the bench, the guy who you can basically thank for even getting you to the final, and then you have Harry Kane, who was anonymous in the first half, hadn't played in 7.5 weeks, and he just took 11 touches. If Poch could have a redo, you have to wonder whether he would have gone with Kane to start or brought him on later when the Liverpool legs were a little more tired if they were in need of a goal. But then again, you also have to feel for Poch when the entire game shifted after just 24 seconds when the referee awarded Liverpool with a penalty as he deemed Sissoko to have handled the ball. Now on first look, with his arm completely in an unnatural position, it looks like a bona fide penalty. But then when you see the alternate angle and see that it hit his chest and bicep at the same time, it sort of makes it seem a little more harsh to me. But I will say, thankfully that wasn't the only goal in this match, as that would have been a rough way for Spurs to go down. But the rest of the first half really wasn't exciting. There's not much to talk about there. The most exciting moment probably came when YouTuber Vitali's girlfriend ran onto the pitch and provided us with some hilarious images. That steward was holding her close after, boy. You know he wasn't gonna let her get away. You know Vitali though, right? The dude who did a porn video and had some technical issues? That's the guy. So anyways, yeah, that was probably the most exciting moment of the half. A lot of the half was Tottenham trying to pass it out from the back, which is where they racked up most of their possession stats. Lloris to Vertonghen, back to Lloris, to Alderweireld, etc. But they couldn't break past the Liverpool press, which is a credit to the Reds. They were suffocating them at times. By the way, on the topic of Lloris, thankfully for him, he wasn't at fault for any of the goals in this major final, as he was in the World Cup, but he definitely looked shaky at times in the first half when he would rise to meet crosses and his punches were a bit, I don't know, I got that oof feeling in my stomach every time he came out to meet the ball. In fact, the second half didn't see much excitement either until we got to about the late 60s minute-wise when Tottenham finally found the rhythm, or at least something resembling it, and started pouring the shots on Alisson. I say something resembling it because this was not peak Tottenham, really. Now I know that me saying that is inviting jokes in the comments of people saying, well, hey, what do you mean Tottenham coming up short is peak Tottenham? Predictable jokes, but you know what I mean. This wasn't Tottenham at their best, and I think their fans, and especially the players themselves, will be more upset not just with the result, but the manner in which they lost. They looked limp. for most of the match at least. And then it was just too little too late for them. So yeah, the second half, for much of it, Liverpool were happy to allow Tottenham to have the ball, just like in the first, as they were just biding their time and waiting for Tottenham to eventually push more and more men forward in search of an equalizer, at which point they would use either Mane or Salah to hurt them on the counter. And I mean, the possession stats don't lie in the second, with Spurs having 66% of the ball. But it's what you do with the ball that counts. And while Spurs were generating some opportunities for themselves, and they did force some saves out of Alisson, he had to make 8 in this match, the 2 of note being saves on Eriksen and Heung-min Son. The rest of the saves that he made were simple, with him barely having to move. And that's not me discrediting them at all, because whether they're simple or not, you still have to make them. But that final 20 minutes of the match really showed how much Liverpool has matured in comparison to last season, as I alluded to earlier. This was something that my guy Dave mentioned in the chat as well during the watch along, and we talked about it a little bit. But before we get there, a big shout out to Divock Origi for his very well taken goal into the bottom corner. You couldn't have placed it better if you tried, and a great dish from Matip to set him up. Origi, despite being a bit of a bit part player at times this season, has certainly scored some massive goals for Liverpool. There was the Everton goal early on, the Newcastle goal more recently, the brace against Barcelona, and then a goal in the Champions League final. Solid season for him. But for me, the main highlights of Liverpool's victory will be the work that their backline and Alisson put in today. This is where Liverpool won the match. I'm thinking of a moment in the first half when Alexander-Arnold read the Spurs attack perfectly, noting that Van Dijk and Robertson and Matip were all caught forward, and he blitzed across the pitch to cut out the through ball that Son was running onto. By the way, in general, the final balls from both teams weren't much to be proud of. It wasn't the greatest final, was it? But back to the defense, like in the second half when Trippier had an opportunity down the right and Robertson came across and stood his ground perfectly and nipped that play in the bud. Not to mention that Matip and Van Dijk basically locked up Harry Kane in a jail cell for most of the match, and when Spurs did have a strike on goal, almost half of them were blocked by the Liverpool players. Fabinho had one, Van Dijk, Henderson, Alexander-Arnold, etc. all got their bodies in front of Spurs' attempts. And of course, as I mentioned, those that got through were dealt with by Alisson or just went wide. And speaking of Van Dijk, I don't think you can understate enough how much he means to Liverpool's success. When Liverpool made him the most expensive defender in the world, I think most people scoffed. I scoffed, and now I'm eating crow because you cannot put a value on what he has brought to that team. Here's a crazy stat from Opta. Not a single player was able to dribble past Virgil van Dijk in the last 64 matches that he has appeared in for Liverpool across all competitions. Now, the one thing that needs some clarification here is that today Son got past Van Dijk, but he was able to recover and put the ball out for a corner, so I guess that negates the dribble. I guess if he had beaten him, then shot wide or dished off to another player, that would have counted, but since Van Dijk recovered, it doesn't, which is kind of strange, because if you get beat, you get beat, but I guess they take it as what you do with the ball after. So if you beat him and then you run the ball out of bounds, what does it matter? Anyway, so like I said in my preview, you didn't want to see either of these managers lose, and I feel sadness for Mauricio Pochettino. But all the same, I feel happiness for Jurgen Klopp, who not only delivered a trophy for Liverpool in a season where they truly deserved one, you know, what with losing just a single match all season in the Prem and all that, but he finally got that European title on his 4th crack at it. His 3rd Champions League final, his 2nd with Liverpool, and his 1st Champions League trophy. And Liverpool fans will be happy to hear that owner John Henry stated before the match that whether they win or lose the Champions League final, they were going to invest more in the squad in order to attain that Premier League title. It's a really, really good time to be a Liverpool fan, so cherish these moments, guys. You have a great ownership group, a great manager, and the player personnel to win trophies for a few seasons, especially if you start adding more quality. Get some of that depth that City has. Now, for Tottenham, it's a bit of a mystery. A new stadium to play in is a positive, so long as Poch sticks around, that's a positive as well. And if the rumors are true that they will invest in their team a little bit this summer, then it's not all drab for Spurs going forward. Sure, it's hard to say when they'll feature in a Champions League final again after how they labored through this competition, but just making it there is an achievement for them, especially after this season. And they provided their fans with some unforgettable moments during this run. They were certainly a fun team to watch. Sorry, my audio got corrupt at one point during the segment because I got animated and smacked the microphone cable, so editor Adrian will take it from here. The biggest thing that Spurs fans will have to worry about is if the team actually does invest in the squad or not. You'd like to think that they would now that the stadium is up and running and they had this great run in the Champions League, but it could take a few years. And if it does, then that could spell trouble. I mean, you look at the likes of Eriksen, how long will he want to stick around? So they'll need a replacement there. How long does someone like Lucas want to just be a bench player? Or Hugo Lloris, he can still do a job, but it feels like his best days are sort of behind him at this point. As well as Vertonghen and Alderweireld. They are only getting older at this point. I mean, there is Davinson Sanchez and Juan Foyth, but I mean, can you really trust either of them to step in and do the job that Alderweireld and Vertonghen are doing at this point? They do have some key areas that they need to invest in, that's what I'm trying to say. And failing to do so for another season could catch up to them very quickly. They got away with it last season without buying anyone. I don't know if it will work again. So, one final congratulations to Liverpool and a final commiserations to Spurs. I'm sorry that me betting against you didn't work out for you when you needed it most, but the dark magic had to run out eventually. Thanks so much for watching. A big thank you to all of the regulars that show up for the watch-alongs and drop donations to support the content. I'm Adrian, this is Rabona TV, and I'll see you soon for some international football, transfer talk, and much more. Love ya, take care.